Good evening, everyone. Good morning, everyone. We're a little loopy tonight. You understand why. It's late. We're still live, working for the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. This is year number 25. I'm Bob Pompeani. Boy, we have a lot to talk about. Number one topic and the big topic will be the Steelers. And let's meet your panel, beginning with Mike Decourcy, Sporting News, Big Ten Network, and now here, finally, Mike has come back to Pittsburgh.
I left 30 years ago, and you waited 5 years. It's safe. He's gone. We can do the show now.
It's good to have you, Mike. We also have Will Graves, Associated Press. Hello, Wanda.
Hey, Wanda. Hope you're up.
And Chris Mueller of the PM team.
I wore my Monday morning best, Pomp, for this show.
Well, listen, we're going to get right into this. I'm going to start, Mike, with you. I mean, all you have to do is look at 11 offensive plays in the second half, 41 overall for the entire game. That's the lowest of any team in the NFL this year. It kind of says what happened today. What was your evaluation of this game? Did you expect it to go this way?
Well, I mean, I've been around long enough to have seen them win a game, but I don't remember it. I think I was 5. So I knew that it was going to be extremely difficult. Every Steelers team that goes to Philly has a difficult day. We've seen worse than this. We've seen Ben Roethlisberger get absolutely besieged. So I thought they did some good things in this game. To be down a touchdown with the ball on the 20-ish yard line with halfway through the third quarter, to have a chance to tie the game, I thought that was not a bad position to be in based on what they'd done in that game. But from that point, another toss sweep. I'm not a fan of that play. And I guess Najee Harris won't be after this one. That was a disappointment. There was a lot of decisions that were questionable. The decision to punt down 2 scores with a 4th and 7 and put your defense back into that grind. And look what happened. They got ground even more than they already had.
Never touched the ball again?
I mean, I think it was just an opportunity to make a statement, and they didn't make it. I mean, I think everything is still ahead of them because they don't have to play the Eagles in the AFC. However, it gives me pause to think if Derrick Henry doesn't touch the ball 25 times on Saturday, like, Monken should be fired. He should have been fired after the first game. The Eagles said, here's the blueprint on how you beat these guys if you've got a mobile quarterback that can run the ball and you've got an offensive line that can push people around. That's what I saw today.
I mean, ultimately for me, this was a game that was more of a casual measuring stick. How are you going to look? But it was obvious without George Pickens. I mean, they went up against an offense that had its full complement. And if you ever wonder why the Steelers don't want to give up on, like, Justin Fields long term, I think Hurts is like the closest thing. 2 burly dudes who run the ball very well between the tackles as quarterbacks when they need to. But without Pickens, this was going to be an incredibly tall order. And I think the Eagles right now, when you combine health, Bob, are the best team in football because they're mostly healthy. For a while there, it looked like we were going to get a classic Tomlin does a Jedi mind trick to get another team to roll around in the mud with the Steelers, even though the Steelers are inferior man for man, except the Eagles did what a really great team does, which is shed that real quick, get one opportunity with the Najee fumble, and then put the game in a stranglehold. So not a lot of global takeaways, to use a Tomlin term. They got beat by a better team and they were undermanned. I think George Pickens might have made himself some money by his absence today.
That's going to be a topic we're going to get into. But first, Mike, back to you on that call you brought up, because I thought it was significant. You know, we're upstairs debating whether or not it's 4th down or 4-down territory. You're down by 2 scores, 10:29 left, whatever it is. 4th down, you're in plus territory. Why wouldn't you go for it at that point? If you're going to tell your defense, which just was on the field for how long, on a 13-play drive, to do it again, you're asking a lot, given how much they were on that.
Yeah, if they hadn't gained yards on the 3rd down play, they were in a significant hole. But they hit a big play and they got to 4th and 7. And at that point, it's automatically 4-down territory because you need to convert there just to have the opportunity to get 2 scores. You couldn't be guaranteed, even with a reasonable defensive performance, that you were going to get 2 possessions again in that game that would be worthwhile. So they had to go for it. Plus, you add in the fact that the defense had really gone through a lot of plays, and to leave them out on the field again and force them to have to go out, even though you had them pinned down. I think they started out on the 4, they wound up on the 2 after a penalty. I still believe that it was a huge mistake, and that's the kind of mistake he doesn't normally make. The aggression late in games is not usually something that Tomlin lacks.
Well, I didn't like it just not only because of in a vacuum. I think he should have gone for it because he should have been able to get a sense of the way the game was going, and that's a big boy football team that can run it right at you and kill clock like they did. Then he went, that was kind of not a give-up call, but I'll play conservatively call. Then why was TJ Watt out on the field with 5 minutes to go when you are still very much down those same 2 scores, when they are already like maybe 5 to 10 yards from field goal range and making it a complete washed out 3-score game? You've got your best player out there. Now, who knows how injured he is or not? They seem optimistic, X-rays are negative, but if you're going to punt with 10.5 minutes to go, why are you leaving your best pass rusher and your best actual player on the field when the game is mostly a lost cause at that point?
I mean, but if that doesn't happen, like...
Are we all going to say, like, where was TJ Watt? We're going to say no. They were getting slapped around late in a game that they were already down 14.
You can also say the same for Patrick Mahomes. He was in the game very late.
I mean, I just think that, let's remember in the past month we've seen them get pushed around in the snow in the game, late in the game by the Browns. They gave up 38 or 31. There was to the Bengals, and I know there was a shootout. Like today was, this is the most expensive defense in the NFL. And when you don't have to Mike's point, I literally turned to my kid in the third quarter and said, this is one of those games, man. I tell you what, if they get a touchdown here, the Eagles fans are going to get a little antsy, and all the stuff that the Eagles had put out there in the first half would evaporate. All those good vibes would have evaporated, and then. To your point, I hate that toss. Najee's not a fumbler, so I'm not putting that on him. That's one bad play out of a season. But the defense, though, when you don't have George Pickens, they needed to be great today.
You know what I'll say?
And they weren't great.
You know what I'll say about the defense, though, where they could have done them a favor if this was really like kind of a meaningless game? Because if you win this week, coming up, you're going to win. You win the division right there. This felt like more of a Justin Fields game, like get him in the game more. Like run a little quarterback power, try to fight fire with fire. And they stood Russell Wilson back there without his best target and said, can you beat a very good secondary passing the ball? I would have maybe, if I'm going to play armchair strategy guy,
I agree with that.
Maybe a little more Justin Fields and maybe a little.
Got injured, but still.
Sure, but taste your own medicine kind of thing.
Yeah. I will say that there were periods. I mean, as much as we talked about Pickens, there were periods in that, especially in the second half, where I was saying, I'm not sure they don't miss Deshaun Elliott today more than they miss George Pickens. He's been great all year, and they really struggled in the secondary, and they struggled in a lot of those run support situations where he could have made a difference.
He's decisive. He comes up and he lays the boom, and he knows where he fits the gaps. I'm gonna throw somebody under the bus here, I think, on that team who just made what I thought were multiple business decisions. Does Joey Porter Jr. want to tackle? There's a third down run by Barkley. I know Barkley's tough in space, but Porter's a corner coming off with the angle, and there was some Olay stuff there. Like, I'd be in the film room if I were Mike Tomlin, if I were Grady Brown in the defensive backs film room. Hey, buddy, playoffs are coming. You got to stick your nose in there whether you want to or not.
That's where Elliott has really missed.
He's been pretty good, but what's interesting, remember a couple weeks ago, Mike was talking about T. Higgins, and he was like, you got to use your fouls on check.
Yeah, he's a goon.
You got to use your fouls on check. And they were given A.J. Brown free passes to the basket to use to make sure our hoops guy feels comfortable here. I mean, they got, to Chris's point, like the DBs were getting sunned, not just by A.J. Brown, but also by
Devontae Smith, who's like who weighs less than me.
Like, it was just not, there was a lack of physicality there that they have, they've had it most of the season, and maybe Deshaun not being there was part of it.
We got to take a break on that note. When we come back, we'll talk about George Pickens. How much money has he made by not playing? Because it's clear they need him back. And what if he's not back? You got the Ravens up next. It's kind of a winner-take-all situation with this division. With the injury situation, what it is, the Ravens coming off a bye. 6.5 is the spread. We'll talk about that game coming up next right here on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. All right, welcome back. Before we get into the breakdown of this game between the Steelers and Ravens, what about George Pickens, Will Graves? Because this is a situation where he's...
I don't even know who that is.
What are you talking about?
I said I don't even know who George Pickens is. I'm sorry, I was there when you said
it. You threw me
couple
off there
Fridays
for a little
ago.
bit.
I'm sorry.
He's made money by not doing this. They're going to have to make a decision on him fairly quickly. What do you think it'll be?
I think I would rather pay T. Higgins than George Pickens. How about that?
You really?
That's what I would rather do if I was the Steelers.
Wow. I'm surprised to hear that.
Well, Higgins might only be commanding $20 million a year. If you think he's a fringe number one or a low-end number one, but still a very good receiver, maybe you can talk yourself into that being worth it. He's only 2 years older than him. Man, Pickens' ceiling though is just off the charts. I don't think he's like the guy off the field that everyone worries about when they make the A/B comps. you never hear a peep about him away from football. He's a maniac competitor. He'd have been sprinting into that scrum on the Darnell Washington play. You want to talk about throwing punches?
If you
He'd
didn't
have
know
been throwing
better, you
through.
thought he
But
came out of the
But
sideline
here's the
and went
thing,
into it.
here's the thing. We all talked about, they talked about on the broadcast how, hey, Kellen Moore's scheming guys open. You know why guys are getting schemed open and why Eagles players are running open? Because they're better. Because A.J. Brown's great, because Devontae Smith's a great player. Pickens, it's a Jimmy's and Joe's game when you have two high-level teams. When you don't have somebody that commands the respect of a safety against a defense that's already that good. You're paying guys $30+ million at that position, honestly, in my opinion, guys, to help you win these games against these opponents, not to beat the Cleveland Browns last week.
But I mean, but my only, I'll let Mike get in a second. My only thing here would be he's played 47 games in the NFL now. Have you seen any evidence at all that the maturity that needs to happen on the field is happening? I mean, when Broderick Jones is the more mature one, the one that's calming you down, and I love Broderick.
Talking about too.
But I mean, A.J. Brown, to use A.J. Brown, I know he's done more. You had that team seemingly in disarray coming into this game. A.J. Brown's mad at the quarterback who happens to be his kid's godfather. It looked like they were at each other's throats, and apparently that was like a Trojan horse of fake turmoil
Philly,
there.
right? So,
I think
Mike,
George
how much
Pickens
is it
is
gonna be?
passionate.
Well, to me, when they were going after Ayuk, I never believed that was a worthy pursuit. I did
agree
not
with you.
believe that Ayuk
didn't
was a
either, right?
No, I
genuinely
did
great
not.
player.
I heard that was at the goal line, though, that deal.
And so, if they have to go to close to $30 million to keep George Pickens, as long as if they are willing to do it, then you know it's worth doing because they know what he's like to deal with day to day.
Right.
And we all remember what it was like with Antonio Brown, both at the end here and in his subsequent adventures in Tampa, et cetera. So if they're willing to do it, I believe in it because I've seen what he can do on the field, and it's amazing.
I'll use the Antonio Brown and Tampa thing to support the point of why I would pay him. It's going to cost 30+. I mean, it'd be a 30 to 31. AB went to Tampa. Brady wanted him in New England. Then he got sent out of there very quickly. Brady still wanted him. He comes to Tampa, and lest we forget, that's a team that won the Super Bowl, had a future Hall of Famer in Mike Evans. You know who their best receiver was as soon as AB got there? AB. Because when those guys are on a team where they're getting the ball and they know they're going to get the ball, usually most of the problems go away. George Pickens this year, I know there have been little incidents.
Right.
I still think it's been way better than the previous 2 years. Why? Ever since 3 took over at quarterback, George Pickens gets the ball. That's what he wants.
The ball out
He got it
when
Mason Rudolph was the quarterback last year too, and he was the consummate team player for 3 games because he was getting the rock.
I would say that I think he was highly targeted early in the season. The problem is that there's a better passer back there now, right? So there's a difference between being targeted and being.
My point is the cure for George Pickens is something you would want. Good quarterback play makes him better, probably makes him happier. You
And
probably
he brings
don't
you a talent
hear as much.
It's hard. Let's talk about the game. Ravens. They're going to be favored. I would expect them to want to play a shootout kind of game. They don't want to get involved in one of these 16-13 games, but it seems like they always do, Mike.
Yeah, and I think no matter which team has the weapons, the assets in that particular game, you go back to 2016, the Immaculate Extension game, the Steelers were firing the ball all over the field in that era. And they get into the Ravens game that day, and it's a slugfest. And so no matter what you think about which team should be able to run up the score, when both teams are good, it becomes what it was a month ago at Acrisure.
Always close.
It's always like that.
It's Obi-Wan in Star Wars. It's Tomlin walking up to John Harbaugh, who wants to play a shootout. This isn't the style you're looking for. No.
But if I were him, I would try to do it just because I think they're going to be limited.
No, I would. I'm saying Tomlin's superpower in this matchup, win or lose, is he seems to trick the other guy, just drag the other coach organically into games that he shouldn't be playing. By rights, Baltimore should beat them 30-10 this week. They should. They have one of the 3 best players in football. I would bet money that they won't beat them 30-10. If they win, they're going to have to earn every second of it.
I mean, I certainly think that you'll see a response from the Steelers. I don't think it's unlikely for them to play maybe this poorly. But the problem is, you got no rest. You can't practice. You're not going to have a fully padded practice. That is my concern. The fundamental issues that Mike was talking about, the tackling stuff. How are you going to fix that when you can't hit each other?
It's hard to do.
So that leaves me wary. And if it's close, let's remember the one kicker is an All-Pro this year, and one kicker is
he's a liability now. You can say.
Right. So you have to wonder if it's tight late. Who do you like in that situation? But it's I can't imagine though. But again, like we were talking off here, I can't imagine there's no scenario that Derrick Henry doesn't get the ball 13 times.
Quickly, I would just say we always are stressing, the Steelers going to do this. They will be in high stress mode if that game is a tie game or within a score either way going into the 4th quarter in Baltimore.
It's going to be a very physical game. We know that. And then 3 days after that, they have to play another big game against Kansas City. The schedule's crazy. When we come back, we're going to talk about the schedule that is college football playoffs. Next, right here on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. All right, we're talking college football playoff. Gets underway. A lot of interesting games. Mike Decourcy, start with you on this one. Do you like the system? And then after that, tell me about Penn State, SMU. Penn State, big favorites, but if they lose, oh my.
Well, I love the system generally. This has been the best college football season of my lifetime, and as you can tell, it's a pretty long lifetime. We're talking about all these games that were great. Texas A&M playing Auburn. That game mattered. 2 years ago, nobody would have cared. One of the teams would have been going to the CarQuest Bowl. Who cares? Now they're playing for a chance at the playoffs. So I love that. I would like to see them abandon the automatic high seeds for the conference champions. It should be, that gets you into the show. And that's the way it should be in the NFL. Remember Denver Steelers 2011. That should get you into the show, but it shouldn't get you a home game and a seed. You should be able to get in based on what you've accomplished. You should be seeded based on the accomplishment. And Penn State is a team that may be seeded higher than they are. Might have been slid up a little bit in the bracket if it hadn't been for the way this was done. But I do think they'll be able to win that game. SMU played in a lesser league than the Big Ten. We all saw the ACC roll through here. It's a good league, but it's not a great league. Clemson, they drilled SMU, and that was not a good Clemson
Well,
team.
Clemson, you know, that game ended tight, right?
It ended tight, but
The
they
game
were.
went to overtime.
I mean, I would say I've seen Clemson in person. I've seen Penn State in person, and if SMU can go toe-to-toe with Clemson, I certainly think they can do it. And to what we were talking about with the Ravens, it's the same thing, and I know Chris is going to get into this. If it's tight late, how do you think the mood's going to be in that stadium?
Oh, it's not going to be good.
As far as Mike's thought on the seeding, like I go both ways. Like I want the conferences, the title games to mean even more. Like I like the idea that you create extra meaning, but I also say this is a made-for-TV thing at the end of the day, is it not? You want the best possible matchup. So if you can jake the seeding to get matchups you think people are going to like, I'm probably more in favor of that in the end. If Penn State, I think SMU's a problem for them. A lot of team speed, absolutely no fear. They played 3 bad quarters against Clemson, who's historically a better team, played 1 phenomenal quarter and probably should have won the game. They are going to give Penn State fits. And don't tell me about, cold weather. They'll be fine up there.
I agree.
I'll tell you what, after
the
birth of each of my sons and my wedding, SMU going into Happy Valley and beating Penn State would be the 4th happiest day of my life, just off the medal stand. I think it could happen. I think that would be worse than missing the playoff any of those 4-team playoff years for James Franklin. That would be a massive, catastrophic failure to lose to a team that was in, the AAC before this past year. That would be a huge mark
What's
against
his record?
him.
1-14 against top 10 teams.
He doesn't beat teams.
This,
he doesn't beat
but
teams
this
he's
would
supposed to
qualify
beat.
even though they're not top 5, to me, this would be same level, right?
It'd be similar, and in a lot of ways worse because they're not top 5.
Right.
And it means more.
We got to take a break. When we come back, Bill Belichick, Rich Rodriguez. We'll talk about those two next right here on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. Two big names back in sports. Bill Belichick, North Carolina, Mike, and then you had Rich Rodriguez, Back to the Future. Your thoughts on both?
Yeah, I'm not a believer in the Belichick hire. I think he has to do a complete transformation at age 73. No, I'm not buying that at all, especially not at the $10 million a year price. Rich Rod's worth a shot. He did a really nice job at Jacksonville State, had a bad fit at Michigan that kind of tarnished his reputation, but we all remember the great work he did at West Virginia.
As the resident Mountaineer on the panel, 17 years is long enough. I'm happy that he's back. And it's so funny, my college roommates, all but one are from West Virginia. They were super pissed. They hated it, they hated it, they hated it. Then they saw the show on Monday, saw on Friday, and they're like all in on season tickets now because of McAfee and the promo they cut on Friday.
One thing about Rich Rod, I think Brian Hartline would have been like the home run hire. Reports are he wasn't interested in that job, so then you can go home again. All right, if the money's there, and it will be, I think he'll make them a lot more interesting. With Belichick, I have one simple opinion. The NFL doesn't want him. That is the A1 story. The man wanted to chase down Don Shula. The league does not want him anymore.
Pretty crazy. And you never would have thought that. But who knows, North Carolina. That'll be fun to watch in the ACC. So Pat Narduzzi and company got to get ready.
Pat's already sweating about this. Pat's already very nervous.
Listen, if you're in the market for a new vehicle, I got some news for you. Don't settle for anything less than #1 Cochran Kia's clearly better car buying experience. You can enjoy exclusive clear-cut pricing where you get their most competitive offer up front, take advantage of exceptional lease and finance rates, and choose from a lineup of nearly 200 new models. You'll experience clearly better car buying at #1 Cochran Kia. You can do it in store, you can do it online. Go to cochrankia.com. All right, final thoughts. Got the Steelers, got the Ravens coming up. Will, how do you see it?
I know the Steelers are won, 8 out of 9. I don't see it 9 out of 10. I think that Baltimore played a big hand in handing the Steelers that first game. Steelers played well, but Baltimore made some decisions that they're not going to make this time. I like them winning, let's say 20-10.
It's going to be much closer than it should be. Baltimore is going to have to sweat. I think they're going to win 20-16. Steelers a better chance to beat the potential fighting Carson Wentz's on Christmas Day.
Lower scores, both of you. I'm surprised. I thought you might see some more points here. Mike,
Yeah, I think it will get up there. I think it'll get up there to maybe 24-21, something like that. But I do think it's going to be hard, especially since we don't know the status of three if you count TJ now, as well as Elliott and Pickens. Just don't know.
Yeah, so it's going to be very interesting to see how it works out. I want to remind you that coming up tomorrow, we'll have the Mike Tomlin press conference. Normally it is on a Tuesday. This week it's going to be on a Monday. So at noon, KDKA Plus, we have that for you. So tune in. You're going to hear the updates on injuries, whatever else may be going on. And then coming up next week after the game, make the switch on the KDKA Plus. We'll have 2 hours of post-game following that game as the Steelers, man, if they win the division. They'll know they'll have the #3 seed at that point. If not, then they're going to have to do some work 3 days later on Christmas Day, which, by the way, you'll see on KDKA. No Netflix, as we say, no problem. We'll have it for you on KDKA. That's going to do it. Big thank you to Mike Decourcy coming in for the first time. Appreciate it, Mike. Will, go ahead.
Shout out, Wanda.
Wanda and Chris Mueller staying up late with 2 kids at home, probably sniffling or whatever else. That's going to do it for us. Have a wonderful holiday season. We'll see you back here next weekend on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown.